Hey, thanks for putting that up, Conjoy. She put up a post that was an article about a Harvard-trained psychologist was talking about how couples, marriage partners, how they can have better relationships so that they, well, I suppose the word that comes to mind is to be in harmony. So with the waves, which are the bands, which is the width of the wave, are in harmony, in an equilibrium state. So they're vibing together. That means that her radio set, her software radio set, and his software radio set, they're tuned in. The mic's tuned in, right? The neurotransmitters and receivers, stereo receiver, AM, PM grids, AM, PM grids. And so what was listed there was much like what I posted on my Facebook page yesterday, that I linked directly to the Voyagers material when they talked about, if you will, 12 virtues or 12 basic, if you want to use the word, tenets of how I experience being what I am, and in relation to going back to being a small little boy and the relationships that we have with others, because we're antennas picking up the signals and then translating the language of DNA, which are bands, radio waves, the spirit in the radio. Okay, so now you're into distortions. That means you're not transmitting a clear signal between a stargate, right? They're not in balance. So that means that the sphere, molecules, right, molecular covalent bonds, right? Now we're into hydrogen bonds, water worlds that are in balance. And so a number of those that were listed there had to do with honor, right? The highest code of honor. The highest code of honor. Integrity, spiritual integrity. What it means to be honest. What it means to be truthful. But I know, because my primary primal sound current mission is healing. And so being a hyperdrive, hypersensitive, polarity integrator, that's like saying that your antenna, all your frequencies that are loaded, in your fire letters, which are all the codes within the strands, you're hypersensitive. So that means that you can actually read from a male's perspective, because I'm in a male avatar, right? Even though I'm androgynous, which is perfectly balanced. And the way that this sort of works, and the difficulty that have happened in relationships, because as I've explained about why my journey took the pathway that it did, and I didn't truly get the full impact of that until I had a full foster ignition, when I realized I wrote my own timeline. And when I look back at it as like a record that I left of how to successfully checkmate artificial intelligence on a binary game board, checkerboard of black and white, right? Because you're navigating your consciousness through a fallen consciousness field, planetary consciousness field, right? So the art of communication is where the center point, that's where it all begins, is communication, which is the language of math, which is the language of music, which is the language of antennas, frequencies and vibration, bands, how the waves, I'm on your wavelength, baby. So one of the benefits, obviously, when you are one with all creation we give love to, it means that we can read your feelings, because now we get into thoughts and what we feel. Okay, so I can shut the thought stuff off, the electronic side, if you will. I don't want any more electronic thoughts. Go directly into my heart, and what do I feel magnetically? Right? Through all the neurons, all the messengers. All the messengers. A message from God. I am feeling what love is. Okay, so the reason I thought this was important, having been in the healing community is because having had relationships that I had with other girls, so I'm naturally, because of how frequency modulation works, trying to tune into her wavelength so that her and I are in balance together. But what you're reading is the resistance that she has to experience what love is through her heart, because of the blockages in the chakras that are preventing all of the circuits from being able to fire, which are all the fire letter codes, so that all the codes that represent all the strands of the DNA are all firing the frequency bandwidth levels. So you realize her state of consciousness is not running at your level of consciousness because she needs to heal. Because now you're experiencing the resistance that she has to heal because she's in fear of healing. And I described how that worked with Misha, and how that works. Basically what it worked when you're connected. My heart and soul is connected to an eternal cosmic sun, and I'm with a girl that has 3 altars and has been through just an unbelievable amount of sexual and physical and emotional and mental abuse that her spirit and her soul has been through. Okay. And so it's like, transfer it all to me. Let it all go. Just release it all. She came within a hair of just allowing it to be transferred, because she already knew that being in the presence of eternity, what eternity feels like. So she's naturally beginning to heal. And as she begins to heal over time, she's releasing a lot of that trauma that's held in her records and her cellular memory recordings, which is the water world. And you can scale that up to the entire planet, all the water, right? All the water held in memory, but are held in records. And then you have the crystalline records. And so in this particular case, what we're talking about is developing an intimate relationship, which is based on one word that I'm very familiar with, and that's called trust. Because what I found with a number of relationships that I had with other girls is being able to establish what I call a baseline in which she begins to really learn who you really are. And the easiest way that I know, in the way that I described it from my experiences, is when she begins to realize you're not in any fear of sharing everything, which means I'm an open book, which is an open receiver. Anything that is held in memory that I'm still holding, using energy to hold it in memory, okay, I'm not afraid to share with you all of it. And she begins to realize, wow, you've experienced a lot of pain. You've experienced a lot of trauma. You've done things yourself that caused you to essentially blow holes in your own energy field. Now she can relate to that. She realizes that you've been through what she's been through. When I had my false frost ignition, I realized I wrote my own timeline. You'd say, you mean to tell me that everything that you experienced with doing this stuff and trying to kill yourself? That's right. And most people are never going to understand that unless they understand what it means like to experience directly, which you've experienced, which you'll be willing to experience all the trauma. It means I had to be willing when you come into a fallen system. Remember I talked about being 9 years of age, and I was experiencing the loss in biovoltage plasma and another being that was lying on a gurney? I'm like 9 years of age when this is going down, and I thought, oh my God, I can't allow my father to know what I'm experiencing, because I'm reading my father's auric energy field, his records. So I realized he's not at a level where I could be comfortable sharing with him what it is that I'm experiencing, because of how I know that is translated. Because then if I start telling that to my father, then he's going to begin to go, whoa, what? Now his library is going to want to start opening up. And the next thing you know, you're in a much larger discussion, right, of the trauma and everything else. But what I'm actually reading are the programming codes, which are the levels of programming. And so now we're back to whether you want to reveal that information, not reveal that information for security reasons, even with my own father, who was an angel. Because once you're able to start expanding your consciousness, by virtue of having access to all those records, which represent all that information on how that all works between software operating systems, genetic mutations, and all the rest of that. See, so now you get into much larger discussions, right? And so it's sort of like keep a tighter focus, you know. Okay. And so this applies in the healing community with the girl that I think I mentioned before that I met in Nigeria. Let's put it this way: her phone number she was calling from a phone number in Nigeria, and so I began writing her long letters and pouring my heart out to her of everything that I experienced when I was a child with my mother, the drugs that I had used, for example, and all of it. She threw it all out. And she began to realize, wow, you just made a huge memory dump. That's called an inventory. I gave her an inventory of me, of what's being held in memory that represents what I am at this particular moment of now time. I just shared my whole library with you. All the skeletons there, everything. That's an open library. That's an open spiritual library. When she began to realize that this was the opening lines of communication between her and me, the result of doing that with myself to her, she began to do what? She began to open her library. Because now she began to realize how deeply you feel, how deeply you care, how deeply you love, how much compassion you have, and the willingness that you have, that she begins to realize through her heart and soul, okay, how much you love her by willing to share everything that we are with her so that we become one. And that's what happens out of that process. Her heart and my heart become one. Her neurons and my neurons, the endocrine system, the central nervous system, her soul and my soul, eyes to eyes, spirit to spirit, become one. We're one with all creation. We're gifting love to. So the evidence of the success in developing trust, okay, which is telling the truth, being honest with who you are, having an intimate conversation, helps to break through all that resistance as a result of trauma. That's the lower resistance. That's the resistance to expand your heart. But you to expand your library. But you to expand your consciousness of everything that's possible to experience that love experiences when it's on fire to create. Right? What begins to happen is you realize that you're both healing each other. That's called a mutually beneficial relationship between two souls and two spirits, huh? So imagine we do this on a star-to-star basis, a star nation-to-star nation basis, one galactic basis to another galactic basis throughout the internal universal observer. And on a multiversal level, right? All the way up the echo. That was my goal, was to restore it all from whence it all began. That's a lot of healing. I believed in my heart and soul I could do that. When you're connected to a cosmic level sun, you better believe it. And so yeah, Kunjoy, thank you so much, dear, for putting that up there about relationships, because when you think about how fear is, because of the trauma that's already held in memory, it reinforces in the subconscious mind instead of experiencing the higher consciousness awareness. The unconscious mind that Carl Jung talks about, that we all know what that is RAM, read access memory, right? Because you go from no memory to memory. You know, the memory matrix, you know, pre-phase, Pre-phase matter, pure consciousness, purest of light, what it feels like, right? Being in a meditative state, walking through time, in a timeless space. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that. You're a Merkaba that's moving through a planetary consciousness field, and you're in a state of just whoa, whoa, go with the flow. You're at the still point. Every cell in your body, every molecule, every water drop, every hydrogen bond, H2 plus 1 equals 3, is perfectly centered in perfect balance to be one magnetic pole. It's on fire. Gifting primal sound currents, sound and light, geometrical patterns. They're in a state of peace, in a state of calm, in a state of harmony, in a state of rhythm, in a state of balance. Being balanced with each other, right? Yeah. So that's why when I've had relationships, I've tried to communicate it to a girl that I want to experience being you. Right? Really, you want to experience being me as if you're really me. Yeah. You're a girl, right? And I'm a boy, right? I want to be everything that you are as a girl, that I am as a boy. Oh, so you want to be a girl too? Well, you're a birth giver, right? Yeah. And I represent the seed side of the cosmos, right? I don't ever want to be separated from you. So in order for me to be what you are, which is the grower side, which is the birth giving side, then I got to be everything that you are in order for me to be what I am with you forever. Oh, wow. So you want to be a flower. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Flower gardens. Absolutely.